2002, filmmaker Richard Linklater started a 12-year filmmaking journey to capture one boy's growth from age 16 to age 18. The result is Boyhood, an epic about life, purpose, and identity. And we're Critical Hit. I'm David.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Kyle.
This was a really, really ambitious film, to say the least, and I think one thing that I'm really pleasantly surprised about really is that it would have been very easy for this movie to be all about sort of the gimmick behind it, which is that, you know, the writer and director actually filmed it over the course of 12 years with the same actors, and yet it's so well made beyond that. Richard Linklater, he wasn't just persistent, he was also just very, very good. And that's my opinion, at least, and so what did you guys think?
No, I think that's a fair assessment. And it's not just him. The people that he chose for these parts, they were really giving it their all as actors. You know, Ethan Hawke was actually really, really exceptional in this as the father, especially, and I was just really excited to see how this child managed to actually really grow into the role. I don't know what kind of acting, training he was going through, but it certainly paid off.
Well, he really created the identity.
Really?
Yeah, and throughout the movie you just see him. You see him maturing as an actor as well as physically.
Yeah.
And it really even helps because, I mean, a big part of the movie is him just, finding himself.
Yeah. This is an interesting experience for me because going to this movie, I was so worried it was going to be a gimmick flick, right? Because, if you ask anyone about Boyhood, if they know what it is, oh, yeah, it's that movie where they took 12 years filming this kid growing up, right? And so I was so worried going into this film thinking, great, what if, that's the only reason this movie is worth anything, is that it took so long and it has natural aging in it. For me, I was relieved and thrilled to as watching it, figure out, oh, this is actually something that's worth looking at, worth discussing. A movie that had to be made this way, I would say. The story absolutely needed to take this long, but it paid off. It's not something that you should go to see only because it was made this way, but you should go see it because it's worth seeing. It's worth thinking about.
Well, yeah. So, what did you see? What did you guys see in the movie that is so worth thinking about?
Lots of things. For one thing, the movie, it's Boyhood, but it's really not just about him. You get how his mother's developing, his relationship with her, with the father, with the sister. Everybody's growing in a different way, and you can see how each of these going in their different directions is impacting the other characters. Mm-hmm. And how every location change even seems to add to it. As new bonds are formed with one character, that character changes, and that ripple somehow goes across the entire family in some way. And it does a very good job of saying that environment matters. Where you are in these moments, that actually impacts who you are.
For me, it was a very, I don't want to say surreal experience, but it was very, very strange, certainly. I watched this movie, and there would just be scenes where I would just say, I experienced that. I know exactly how Mason Jr. feels in this scene. I can understand I'm disconnected from this. I don't know how to express this.
Part of that is just how well he did, setting it with the icons from our past.
But it's so structured in a way, it feels like this was just genuine recordings. And so you watch these scenes and you understand... Yeah, as a boy who grew up in America near the time that this character did, I just would sit there and experience what the character experienced, and that was really strange to me.
Well, I knew one moment, and this was near the beginning, actually, so it did a really good job of tying me in. There's one moment where you see the main character, Mason, sort of fighting with his sister, and initially it's pretty kind of angry and harsh and stuff like that, and I was the youngest of four siblings. I know everything about sibling rivalry.
Right.
But and yet later in a very next scene when they're in the car and they're fighting, but it's all just very fun. It's all just really fun. There's that sort of whirlwind of a relationship when you're a kid where it's 1 minute you can really kind of hate someone and the next minute you could just then they're your sister like that. And that's only one example of an entire treasure trove of things that we could bring up from this movie.
Right.
That really just resonates so much with one's childhood.
I think that that's what's so good is that he puts out things that mean something to a particular generation, but there's also sort of an applicability of other stuff that can reach out to anyone who's watching this movie. It really works for kids who were the same age as him, but even someone who's a few years older like myself can go, oh, he's watching Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
I remember
the Dragon Ball Z
they're playing Halo together.
They're playing Halo,
went through that.
The different games that the games that they play.
Yeah. It's so interesting because you say it, for me, so much of the movie was those flashbacks, those experiences. His 15th birthday was a Bible and a shotgun, and I had that birthday. It's so, there's weird scenes in this movie that happen. Like, or the boys are up late chucking saws into the side of drywall, or chopping wood just because they know how
They're
to.
destroying things because they can.
Because they're boys.
Because they're eighth graders, and I was that eighth grader. Like, my friends were those eighth graders. They're we're all idiots. Like, it was just, it's so...
I mean, they're having conversations where they're making claims about their sex lives that are that
So
are obviously
ridiculous.
false.
Yeah, for me, it's such an interesting movie because either every scene that I saw was something that I experienced, or I knew people who experienced it.
Yeah.
I did. So like even like that really harsh scene where they walk out of the house of escaping the abusive husband.
Oh my gosh.
Like I had that friend, you know.
Yeah.
Like I had those friends who had to leave those situations, and I understand the looks on the character's face in the film because I had I knew those experiences from those people.
Yeah.
So like it's a very interesting film. Not because necessarily it's a trip down memory lane, but it resonates with you. Mm-hmm. It reminds you of what it was like to be 8 and see this, or to be 10 and experience that.
Something that's really special about this movie is how it's able to pull us in, to give us these moments of familiarity. Mm-hmm. And whether it's something like as simple as peeing on the ashes of the campfire with your dad, or just riding around in that car, and what a significant thing it is for a little boy to be in his dad's car, and what that ends up meaning to him. But this movie, it takes those familiar moments, and you're constantly going, oh, I can relate to this. But at the same time, you have a character who you're watching grow up, and you don't actually know where he lands every time the scene changes. Every time that he's going to grow, you don't know what's going to happen to him.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is that one thing that the writer did was that he specifically wrote the movie as the actor was aging, just so that the character would be in line with how this kid's natural, real development was. So in a certain sense, they didn't even know at least exactly how it would end, while they were making it.
That's great. Yeah, that comes... You can really see that coming through there.
This is something that was really good in this contained section, but it's interesting as a storyteller to see how this success came about when he had, I would say, about 10 to 11 years of not knowing if it was gonna be a success.
Well, I think part of it, this not knowing thing, that's so much of a theme in this movie. That he managed to make a piece of art where the message matches the medium is really, really great here. And watching him do this, where you're constantly being shown something familiar and something kind of unknown. You're getting this constant push of known and unknown going on here. Mm-hmm. And you get that, and it's part of this kid's developing. He has a split family. That's a really rough situation that a lot of people can identify with, but this is a particularly extreme case. And the idea of there's this child who's supposed to grow into a man without really having a father figure there to be that guiding person. His name is Mason. He's Mason Jr. His father is a Mason. Yeah. He's made in the image of his father in this sense. And you have this kid you have the father who wasn't able to be there for him, who wasn't able to mature and be a man when he was supposed to be a man. And as a result, you have this kid who's wandering aimlessly towards something that he kind of knows, manhood, but doesn't quite. Mm-hmm. He doesn't quite know how to get there or what that's supposed to really look like. And this wandering, this knowing and unknowing, this gets to be a microcosm for all of human experience in a way in which we're not quite sure of what our purpose is and what that's supposed to be. And you see that in some of those in those end scenes where he's talking about the purpose of life.
Well, and this was something that while I was watching the movie, at first I found it to be a bit of a flaw, was that, Mason, he seems like a kind of a blank character, and that, he's not very outgoing, he's very introverted. It seems like for most of the movie, in fact, almost all he does is react. But one thing that I really came to realize is that that's really that's really kind of the point of his character, is that he's so directionless, and I think part of that is because he was not raised with a stable father figure.
Right. Yeah.
I think part of it is honestly just sort of the society that he grew up in, but it's like he's very much. The movie really is a story of him just sort of struggling to find identity in an environment where there's just nothing for him.
There's a line at the end of the movie where it's not how we seize the moment, but the moment seizes us, and that really speaks to that. Mm-hmm. Your environment really does have an impact on who you are as an individual.
Well, also,
and you get that with him. He is his father's son. He is growing up to kind of be a lot like what his father is there, and where his father began, he's kind of going towards that direction. He can learn from the mistakes. He can, but there's still a sense in which there's that openness about it that you get at the end of the movie that then reflects the entirety of the film.
Well, it does. Yeah, it does end on such an ambiguous note because it almost felt, in terms of like any kind of character arc. I mean, I'm sure this was deliberate.
Right.
But it felt so incomplete because when you look at where Mason is in his life, he's just getting into college, which is where a lot of people find identity in the first place. He just broke up with his girlfriend, and I do a lot, and I think that was a result of some identity issues he was having. It really does not resolve the questions it brings up.
But the ending,
and deliberately so.
But the ending's so comfortable with the story too. Like I was completely satisfied when the credits rolled. Like that conversation, especially the end one. Like there are a couple times, like overall, the movie does a very good job of just like it's hard even to describe like a plot for this movie because it's just showing you this life. But every now and again, I'd say that the writer comes in the storytelling and puts a little message, it puts a little view. And I think the ending is absolutely that. But it fits so perfectly that I'm not personally upset by it. But it's this moment where you see the character has finally been made aware of what we of the audience have seen the entire time, that there is a conscious choice here.
Well, right, and the ending, he's just gotten to college, he's going out and doing something with his roommate's girlfriend, and another friend that they brought along, and he's having a conversation with her, and they're having this. Why don't you?
Yeah. I mean, so basically, they ate some brownies before they traveled on the trip. So the conversation,
so they are high. So
they're high.
That's
so
part of it.
Well, it's kind of funny because I also think that was a good way to justify the conversation.
It was a good excuse for them to communicate an actual message.
But these two characters sit down on some rocks in this beautiful. I wish I knew the area, but it was like outdoors.
Big Bend. I think they called it Big Bend.
Something like that.
Whatever.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And they sit there, and this female character who's just been introduced, Nicole. So it's like 5 minutes to the end of the movie, she's introduced, and she sits down next to him, and she says, we're told in life always that we should go and seize the moment, but I think the moment seizes you.
Right.
And then Mason replies basically with saying, well, yeah, I think life's like that. Every second is this moment that we have like the opportunity to pursue or not. And like the movie just ends there, where it has this beautiful concept of Mason realizing every moment is significant. Right? Every moment is your story being told.
In a way, what it did there, it did the Forrest Gump ending, actually, is what it did. It's a question of whether it's your choices or whether it's the environment. It's both statement.
Well, and that line, it does such a good job of putting the entire movie into context. Because I like what you said earlier about this movie. It doesn't really have a plot. I'd add to that. It has a plot in the same sense that life has a plot.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, if someone just came up to you on the street and asked, what exactly is the plot of your life? You just, I'd respond.
What's the climax of your story?
Hard to tell at this point.
I'd respond with a blank stare because, you can't crumple, real life into that sort of sequence. And this movie, what I like so much is this movie doesn't.
Until you're dead.
That movie doesn't try to do that though.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it feel so genuine.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing I loved so much actually about the movie is I loved to think about it as a whole and think about the characters when they were at the very end of the movie and how that compared to when they were earlier. Like the whole arc of the sister who's wasn't sister name? Sam.
Yeah.
I'm a professional. We begin seeing her as a very outgoing, very very verbal, very precocious child.
Assertive, yeah.
And as she matures, it's a kind of thing where she really detached from the world around her.
Yeah,
she kind of shuts down.
Yeah, and she kind of shuts down, and it's a thing where because it's gradual, and what makes this movie emulate life so well is it's gradual enough that you don't actually notice it as it's happening.
Yeah.
You only notice it as you're looking back in retrospect, but when you do, it's kind of horrifying.
It's really interesting to watch both siblings throughout this time and how they both become these people who have distanced themselves from others, who question authority basically on the principle that it's unreliable, and it is. All authority figures totally fail them.
But I would say that where she kind of ends up completely almost nihilistic with it, he's kind of hopeful agnosticism.
At the very end.
He has like a chance. I feel like he has a chance.
At the very end, perhaps, but I would still say throughout the movie, they're both incredibly aimless. They're both incredibly doubtful this world will give them what they want. They're both incredibly disappointed by what they've gotten so far. Even scenes that are like good memories, that should be good memories, like I think of the night that he and his girlfriend spent out on town. And they're like, it's 3 a.m. and they found some 24-hour restaurant, they're eating French fries. And even in that scene, Mason Jr. is so down and depressed, like in a constant state of it, that he can't even seem to realize he's having a good time.
Well, that ties into something that's really interesting about this movie. that I would say they did a great job on is the way in which they depicted a broken family.
Yes.
Where it's not just all bad. There are moments of really pure enjoyment with both parents.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're having a wonderful time. And you saw legitimate beauty and happiness that can happen for a child of divorced parents.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they make sure that this director made sure that you knew that it was imperfect and flawed, and the sheer fact that this wasn't happening all the time or that there was this separation made those moments kind of tragic.
Yeah.
Even in their beauty and how happy they were.
Well, here's the big thing for me is we've talked a lot about like what this movie got right about these time frame. But for me, the biggest thing it got right was that it understood that generation as it was developing to what it would be like and became. Like this is a generation where we don't have figures to look up to. We don't have these role models that we can trust anymore because they've let us down. It's an incredibly aimless questioning of like the question he asked his dad at one point is like, well, what's the big purpose? What's the point of it all? We are a generation that's very dissatisfied, I would say, with what we've been given, and we want to know what the point of it is. We want to know why we're here or what we're supposed to be doing.
And I think that Mason's a good character to be able to express some of that because he's recognizing his parents are so similar to him.
Yes.
At that point, he realizes, I don't think my mom knows any more than I do.
Yeah.
What this is all about or how to feel.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, there's one really poignant scene, towards the end where the mother, it's when Mason's just about to go off to college.
Yeah.
And his mother just breaks down crying because it's like she's at a point where, the way she puts it is now the only really big event in my future is my funeral.
She says
it was a remarkable scene,
Yeah.
and where she basically couldn't even let her son have this moment of going away. She had to make it all about her and break down because things just didn't meet her expectations.
Yeah.
She said that I expected more out of this.
Yep.
And it's so interesting because we have this movie where all these characters are just experiencing life. And it's goodness, but it's disappointments, and how so many of these characters will tag on to the disappointments and hold on to them so that they become distant. They become depressed.
I find it so amazing and a little ironic that it's the mom who ends up in that space and not the dad. The dad actually ends up with the happy family.
Well, we should talk more about the dad because I think he's
an incredible character.
He's a great character. He's such a good character.
He really is, and he obviously speaks to who the boy is and who he should be. One thing in particular, his inability to grow up and be the father for them.
Yeah.
But then, and again, this movie does an amazing job of showing, not telling.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And the way in which they had Mason looking at his half brother there, and his dad driving the minivan now, and being the dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this moment of you changed for him.
Yeah,
you didn't change for me.
Yeah. It's like because with the arc of the dad is that he's not a fundamentally horrible person, but he's kind of a deadbeat dad at first, and he's only kind of there. But then what happens is he meets, and a lot of this happens off camera. He meets someone else, and he gets married and has a family, and then I loved how they represented in the movie because he suddenly has a mustache.
Yeah,
and that communicates though how he's gotten responsible and now he's stable. But by the time he finally decided to button down and actually take responsibility for things in his life, he can't help his original children anymore.
And here's the thing: he tries. He tries desperately to bring them into the folds of that new family. He takes them up to see the half brother's grandparents.
Yeah.
To see his new in-laws.
Yeah.
And as awkward as it is for him to meet his new in-laws, it's more awkward for his kids to be there. They're 2 steps removed at that point. Trying to engage with these people.
But that's the thing about the character himself is he's like, for me, I admire him the most out of all the characters in the story because out of all the characters, he's the one who is trying constantly.
He is trying.
Like there's a point early on in the movie where he's driving his kids to a baseball game, and they're like 8 and 10 or so, and he's asking his daughter like how her day was, and she won't give him an answer. So he pulls the car over and he says, "No, I'm not going to be that scumbag dad that just comes over once a month to take you out and have a fun time."
Right, he's telling the kids that, and he's telling himself that.
He's
too.
like, yeah, exactly. Like he's saying, I want to know why you're upset with your friend and why she broke up with her boyfriend Billy. Like he's like, I want to know what video game you're playing and why it's fun or why it's boring and why you play it. Like I need to know this. And it's interesting because the son Mason Jr. comes back and says, "Well, Dad, we don't know about your life." And there's this point where you see him consciously say, "You're right. I need to involve them in my life, and they need to be involved in my life."
And there's the difficulty is because he doesn't ever actually make that jump.
Yeah.
until when he tries to later, when he has a new established family,
Yes.
where he tries to bring them into his perfect world because he couldn't bring them into his imperfect world.
Yeah.
It's perfectly summed up when he gives them the Black Album, which is this really, really cool thing that I actually want.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
where the dad perfectly arranged all of the after the Beatles broke up, he takes all of George, Paul, Ringo, and John's stuff, and he puts it into an album called the Black Album instead of the White Album, and it's this really fantastic thing where you're getting all of their songs together in that way, and that's speaking to different aspects of life that he wants to be able to give to these this kid. And so he's desperately trying to put something together that's broken. You can keep on saying that it's together, that it's the Beatles, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that reflects that moment where the kids go and they spend time with these grandparents who aren't their grandparents.
Yeah.
And they
and the grandparents are super accommodating.
they're
the ones-
wonderful. They're fantastic people.
It's Mason's 15th birthday, and the two presents they give him are a personalized Bible and a gun that's been in the family. Like they really, you can tell they really
They're
want
welcoming
to,
him
they
in.
want to make, they really want to make him part of the family.
Yeah.
And even though I think it's weird because I think both parties are of goodwill. Like I think Mason seems to really like them too, but at the same time, there's just this disconnect that just can't be breached.
At the same time, because the father didn't welcome Mason in at an earlier stage, he doesn't have a paradigm for engaging with any of these things. He doesn't have a paradigm for engaging with these grandparent figures.
Yeah.
And on another note, he doesn't have a paradigm for engaging with religion.
Yeah.
You see that when they take him to the church, and they're all sitting back there being polite.
Yeah.
They're the guests at the church kind of situation.
But
whereas-
clearly uncomfortable.
but clearly a little uncomfortable. The sister much more so, and he's still a little bit questioning, and which is great because they give the doubting Thomas passage there.
Blessed are those who not see but believe.
Yes, which is great because it then fits with this feeling of known unknown that's throughout the entire movie.
Well-
but with that, you get them later going to the lake, and he's talking about, so were we baptized, Dad?
Yeah.
And he kind of gets cut off by the sister in a way where it's like, you're not going to be one of those God people, Dad, are you? And the dad was like, do you think that I actually, you think I really cared about the state of your souls back then?
Yeah.
Which, he was being playful, but that said a lot.
Yeah.
So even though this character didn't come in there as the militant atheist or what have you, where he doesn't like this religion, he doesn't have any philosophical opposition to it, but he just doesn't have the framework to actually process it. He doesn't have the paradigm because there wasn't that emotional familial support going on way back when.
Yeah.
And so now he can't have it introduced to him.
It's so interesting to me how much the background in this movie plays into I would say the lesson of the movie wants you to learn, and also the experience that the characters are having. So you have the Black Album, you have the sermon, which is the blessed are those who do not see but yet believe, which is the idea of it's not just everything you experience, but something physically experience, but the thing beyond that, which is interesting with a movie where it's all about the physical experience. Then you have the two times that he sits down in a college class as a kid. And the first time is when his mom's going to college, the second time when his mom's teaching college. But both times are on the same subject, and that is on the subject of attachment and how humans have to form personal attachments and love to survive. And so it's an interesting movie where you have all these questions about what is the point, or what is the purpose, what should I be looking for, what should I be finding? And in the background throughout the thing are all these little influences that are saying similar things to what's said towards the end about sharing the moment, experiencing the moment. Like the teachers are talking about how having love and experiencing community is going to impact you positively, and that's why humans desire it so strongly. Having that personal connection is so precious.
Right.
And you have the Black Album, which is talking about how do you make something that's broken come back together. All these things, and just throughout the entire movie there's these little intelligently placed backdrops that just give a little glimpse into what's the point here? What's really going on?
In the end, it's just there's something that is missing, and it's again this theme of they've got the understanding that there's this physicality to the world, that the world works a certain way, but they know that there should be something more to it, that they know that there's a meaning beyond this, and it's that known unknown that seems to drive and influence the entire story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, well, obviously there's a lot to talk about in this movie, and we certainly haven't exhausted it. So,
Not at all.
So, I know for me, I think this, I feel really happy for Richard Linklater, honestly, because he went through so much effort to get this movie made, and it all paid off.
It was bold.
It totally paid off. They'll be talking about this movie for decades. Like
Yeah.
this is the film students 50 years from now are probably still gonna hear about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
Rightly so.
I know for me, I think this was a huge success, and I look forward honestly to watching the movie again and
Yeah.
just seeing what more I can learn about it.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought it was pretty fantastic.
There's a lot of repeat value in this thing.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. One big takeaway that I really was appreciative of is that, like you talked about earlier, like it's not so much as a plot, but that this is just life. And it was a good, healthy reminder that we need to keep in mind that, our lives are a story. Like what is the story of your life? And how conscious are you going to be? Are you going to be like Sam, who lets these things push her away and close herself off from the world? Or are you going to be more active and conscious and willing to participate? Mm-hmm. Like it's this interesting question of the story of your life in a lot of ways is up to you. What are you going to make out of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really, really appreciated seeing that.
Personally, I liked it. I don't know, how much of it I could personally agree with, but at the same time, it presents itself as legitimate life experiences for this kid and his family. And in that way, I love it. It's honest, and it comes out there and it tells the truth that I think that can be affirmed, and it does an excellent job of using both its of making the message really match this remarkable style that it decided to go with.
Yeah. So, well, I think that I think we've
That's
done
it.
pretty. I hope we've done a good job of selling this movie to you. So go see it if you haven't. See ya.
Later, guys.